The battlefield of Kalthara smoldered under a crimson sky, smoke rising from the scorched earth like the final breaths of the fallen. Sarathis descended through the haze, her obsidian scales catching the dying light of distant fires. She had seen 1,000 such fields in her 3 centuries of existence, but this one felt different. The silence was too complete, too heavy with finality. The war between humans and dragons had raged for generations, born from misunderstanding and fed by fear. Dragons saw humans as destructive invaders, spreading across worlds like a plague. Humans saw dragons as monsters, territorial beasts guarding resources that could save dying colonies. Both sides had forgotten how to see anything else. Sarathis landed among the wreckage, her massive claws sinking into ash-covered ground. She had come seeking survivors, not to save them but to understand why humans fought with such desperate ferocity. The dragon elders spoke of human weakness, but Sarathis had witnessed their courage, their refusal to yield even when facing certain death. There was something in their species that defied logic, something worth studying. That's when she heard it. A cry, small, fragile, utterly out of place in this graveyard of war machines and fallen soldiers. Sarathis's pupils contracted to slits as she followed the sound, her predatory instincts warring with something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or the faint stirring of a conscience she thought she'd buried long ago. Beneath the twisted remains of a human transport ship, wrapped in a thermal blanket already failing in the cold, lay an infant. The baby's face was red from crying, tiny fists waving at the uncaring sky. Around him lay 2 bodies, a man and a woman, their final act positioning themselves as shields over the child they could no longer protect. Sarathis stared at the scene, her mind calculating. The logical action was clear. Leave the infant to the elements as nature intended. 1 less human to fight in 20 years, 1 less enemy. But the baby's cries cut through her logic like plasma through armor. The child didn't know hatred, didn't know war, didn't know that the massive creature looming over him was supposed to be his mortal enemy. The infant simply cried for warmth, for food, for the comfort of arms that would never hold him again. Sarathis's clawed hand reached out, so large it could have crushed the child with the slightest pressure. Instead, she lifted him with impossible gentleness, her scales warming at will to provide heat. The baby's cries quieted almost immediately, tiny hands grasping at her talon. In that moment, Sarathis made a decision that would alter the course of 2 species. She disappeared into the clouds, the infant clutched against her chest, leaving behind only scorched earth and unanswered questions. The dragon sanctum of Velshara existed in the deep reaches of uncharted space, hidden within a nebula that played havoc with most sensors. Sarathis's arrival with a human infant caused immediate uproar. Dragons gathered in the great chamber, their voices a symphony of growls and resonant challenges. "You bring a human here?" Elder Corthanis's voice boomed. "Have you gone mad, Sarathis?" "I bring a child," Sarathis replied, her own voice steady despite the judgment surrounding her. "One who knows nothing of war, nothing of hatred. Perhaps that's precisely what we need." She named him Aiden Cross, taking the surname from the identification tags of his fallen parents. And despite the protests, despite the warnings and predictions of disaster, Sarathis raised the human boy among dragons. The early years were hardest. Human infants required constant attention, warmth, nourishment in forms dragons barely understood. Sarathis learned to synthesize human-compatible food, to create environments where Aiden could grow without his fragile body failing. Other dragons watched from a distance, skeptical but curious. As Aiden grew, something remarkable happened. He learned to speak both human languages and the harmonic frequencies of dragon speech. He studied both human technology and dragon wisdom. But more importantly, he learned to see both species not as enemies, but as people, flawed, capable of both great cruelty and profound kindness. By the time Aiden reached adolescence, he had become a bridge that shouldn't exist. Young dragons who would have been taught to fear and hate humans instead knew one personally. They saw his cleverness, his resilience, his capacity for loyalty and love. They saw that humans weren't so different from themselves. Aiden, for his part, understood dragons in ways no human ever had. He knew their honor codes, their deep connection to the cosmic forces they could manipulate, their genuine fear of humanity's rapid expansion and adaptability. He saw their perspective, even as he carried the genetic memory of his own species. When word reached the sanctum that human forces were planning a final assault on a dragon world, Aiden made his choice. At 17, standing before the Council of Elders with Sarathis at his side, he proposed what seemed impossible: peace talks. "I am proof," Aiden said, his voice carrying both human passion and dragon certainty, "that our species can coexist. I carry human DNA and dragon teachings. I am both and neither. If you'll let me, I'll show both sides what they're too afraid to see, that we're more alike than different." Elder Corthanis, who had opposed Aiden's presence from the beginning, stepped forward. "And what makes you think either side will listen to a human raised by dragons? You're an anomaly, boy. An accident." "No," Sarathis interjected, her voice filled with conviction. "He's proof of what's possible. Humans are capable of evolving beyond their nature just as we are. Aiden is that evolution made flesh." The vote was close, but ultimately the council agreed. Aiden would be their emissary, backed by Sarathis's reputation and protected by ancient dragon law. He would go to the human military command and offer something they'd never had: understanding. As Sarathis and Aiden prepared to leave the sanctum, the old dragon looked at the young human she'd raised from infancy. He stood tall now, confident, carrying himself with both human determination and dragon grace. "Are you afraid?" Sarathis asked. Aiden smiled. "Terrified. But that's what makes us human. We do it anyway." He paused. "That's what makes us like dragons too." Sarathis's rumbling laugh echoed through the chamber. 17 years ago, she'd found a crying infant beneath a battlefield and made an impossible choice. Now that infant had grown into something neither species expected: hope. As they launched into space toward human territory, Sarathis realized that sometimes the most revolutionary act wasn't destruction or conquest. Sometimes it was simply choosing compassion when logic demanded otherwise. Sometimes it was seeing past fear to possibility. Aiden Cross would bridge two worlds because Sarathis had refused to let him die. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would make all the difference.